Well, my name is Mary Newton, and I am currently Secretary of the Irma Historical Society. I was born and raised in Irma, and always loved history. Our mother was a great historian, so that really helped our family keep it up. The museum has been a fascination since we started. My mom was really interested in it, and of course got me interested, so we started the Historical Society back in 1981. And I was the first president of that. So that's kept up a lot of interest. It took a lot of time, and I couldn't keep up probably the commitment of being president all the time, but we did publish history books, and that was very fascinating. And so I was, the first volumes, we had volume 1 and 2. Then we went on and did number 3 in the last couple of years. So I was also in on that one, so I look at that as quite an accomplishment and an appreciation of my mother's value of history. It stayed with us. Well, the Historical Society started, like I said, back in 1981, and it was a good group of people really interested in saving history. And so the first big project was doing the first set of history books. And that was in 1981, I think, that they were done. No, that's probably wrong, but it doesn't really matter. The first were a two volume set of history books. And all the time that we were meeting and thinking about what we should do as a historical society, they really wanted to have a museum. And so for some time, I would say just a very few years, we would take some of our items and put them, say, in a couple stores in downtown to try and get a little more interest. And then in later years, the St. Mary's Anglican Church said they would donate us that building for a museum. So that really helped us out. It was situated over on 881 on the highway just on the west side of town. And from there on, we gathered stuff and set it up as a little museum. And it was just the little white church that's out here, St. Mary's Anglican Church. And that was our first building. And back in 2008, Canadian Natural Resources owned this property. They used to have people that worked with the company living here, but they decided to donate the property to us, so that meant the donation of the house and 1 acre of land. And that was a very big event for us. It allowed us to collect a lot more items. And you probably know from looking around that this was the original home of Jean Perry, who of cookbook fame. So there's a lot of history just to the house itself. And he was 1928, this house was built. So it's pretty old. And it's quite unique in its way because they actually had power. Mr. Elford had a power plant here in Irma. He also had a car dealership downtown. So it all lent itself to making a really interesting museum. And before we put articles into this house, we actually had a 100-year celebration of the United Church of Irma hold a celebration here at the church. And from then on, we collected antiques, put in this building, and it's just grew from there. It's just grown from there. So we had enough money donated to us that we could move the little church over to the grounds, and did that. It was a big job. And in some of our scrapbooks that we do have here, it shows the actual movement over of the building. And so, of course, time went on, and then we had word that another gentleman in the area that was a big collector, he had a big lamp collection. And so we were able to raise enough money, plus donations, and we built the new building, which is to our out north here, and that holds the big lamp collection. And then a donation from an estate meant enough money that we could add a portion that was going to be stipulated for agriculture. So we have a bit of agriculture stuff and also a 4-H corner. So it's just grown by leaps and bounds. In 1981, the Irma Historical Society was formed And that was a group of senior people in the community that were really, really interested in getting that history written down and preserved. And of course, along with your history, there's always lots of pictures. And so that led to us going on and producing a set of history books. And that was in 1985. And up to that time, we hadn't had a building, of course, so we put some of our items into shops in Irma that were willing to take few little bit of displays. And then from there, the little Anglican church became available. And so that was our first building, and that was on the highway. So we just kept that up, put these things into there, and from there on, it just grew. And when Jean Perry's house became available here, that's Jean Perry of the cookbook fame. When this house became available, Canadian Natural Resources donated it to us, and it became the main building for us. A lot of people that come to the museum are really fascinated that it was Jean Perry's birthplace, and some don't recognize it, so then they're quite thrilled to think that this was where Jean Perry came from. And there is one little neat story that's attached to the house from Jean Perry's mother. People have no idea where the name for the cookbook come from, and I'm just going to sneak that in because I think it's really important. In the early days, a lot of people couldn't earn a living, and they rode on the trains called hobos, and Mrs. Perry would offer a plate of food out on her front deck for the men that hopped off the train and came up. And she always said to her children, "Oh, there's company coming." And that's how come Jean Perry decided to call her books Company's Coming. And I always think that's such a little fascinating sidebar to this house because it was the birthplace and the history of that as well. We have a lot of items that are from the early 1900s. Some of the things like shaps for riding the horses. We even have an old sheep shearing outfit out there that's a handheld one. When we had a visitor from Alberta Museums and all the tours he's made, he'd never seen one. So we thought that was really neat. And we didn't want to lose a lot of this stuff. And there is people that really don't see any value in old things. And, partly is that because we were all raised with a lot of old things, but children love it. And we have school tours come over, and the kids just love that, coming here and looking around, and they're fascinated with everything and the questions they ask you. How better can they learn about history than doing it with some of us oldies that are still here, grandmas and great-grandmas? Yeah, we think that's a real benefit, and we love to do it.